Tobe Hooper is one of the most influential horror filmmakers of all time. His work in movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist has made him a celebrated horror filmmaker among the horror audience. After his groundbreaking successful movies, in 2004, he came up with another body horror / slasher movie called Toolbox Murders, drawing inspiration from the famous 1978 slasher movie The Toolbox Murders. So what are you waiting for? Grab your popcorn and enjoy the ending explanation of this horrifying tale of murders. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. New tenants in the building. The movie starts with a beautiful girl named Daisy getting into her apartment building named Lessman Arms in a secluded neighborhood in Hollywood. Once deemed as a luxurious hotel, the Lessman building has lost its charm and now it is under refurbishment and is home to many struggling actors who never made it to the silver screens. On her way inside the building, Daisy meets the jolly receptionist Lewis and a creepy-looking renovating worker Ned in the lobby. But soon after Daisy enters her apartment, she gets attacked by a man wearing a balaclava who smashes her head using a hammer. After a few days of the murder, a married couple named Neil and Steven moves into the building. Steven works as a medical intern in a nearby hospital, and Neil is a teacher still looking for work in this new neighborhood. Though Steven seems content with the place, maybe because he stays out of the building most of the time, Neil hates being alone and witnessing all the chaos. You can't blame her because nobody wants to live in a building full of weird, annoying neighbors, constant drilling noises from construction, and moaning neighbors all night. The mysterious killer. While Steven works on his long hours, a bored Neil befriends her next-door neighbor Julia, a sweet and young actress. She also meets an elderly gentleman named Chas Rooker who finds her in the building a breath of fresh air because according to him, he has seen enough beautiful yet dumb people trying hard to make it big in movies. He also educates Neil about the Lessman building regarding its infamous history where the builder, Mr. Lessman, and the workers died from uncertain conditions before the completion of the building. One night, Neil hears a man screaming aloud from one of the apartments. Scared by the noise, she immediately asks for help from the police. But when the police checked into the scene, they found a man rehearsing his dialogues for his audition. Later at night, both Neil and Steven laugh off this incident and spend the night together passionately. While decorating the house the next day, Neil accidentally finds a tiny box of teeth inside a wall. When Steven returned, they complain to the manager about their new finding. The manager passes it off as a joke and assures them not to be too suspicious about the incident. Later at night, Neil has a scary dream about the death of her father, but gets woken up by her next-door neighbor Jennifer's loud guitar practice. To avoid Jennifer's untasteful and loud rock music, Neil raises the volume of her radio. After some time, when Neil turns the volume down, she hears Jennifer scream from her apartment, and we see the same masked man killing Jennifer with the help of a nail gun. When the police arrive, they fail to get any traces of Jennifer and blame Neil for calling them twice without evidence. But we get to see a half-dead Jennifer nailed up to the ceiling, failing to call for help. The secrets of Lessman building. Jennifer's sudden disappearance becomes suspicious for Neil, but she lets it go when Jennifer's boyfriend tells her that she might have left for Miami with another man. To overcome her distress, Neil plans a day out with her friend Julia to the nearby farmer's market, but before they can fulfill their plans, Julia gets killed by the killer at night. But this time, instead of using any construction tools, the killer strangles Julia using a curtain and kills her in her apartment. In the morning, Neil goes to Julia to take her to the farmer's market, but she cannot find her anywhere. Worried about her friend's well-being, Neil searches for everywhere inside the building. While looking for Julia, Neil hears a lady talking to her husband about their son Austin, who is taping Julia secretly. Upon hearing this, Neil warns Austin about his little secret and asks him for the tape to investigate Julia's matter, but Austin refuses to give her the tapes, saying he has already discarded them. This incident profoundly impacts Neil, who calls Steven at the hospital and informs them about this matter. Determined to search for her friend, Neil sets her feet out of her apartment. But there, she stumbles with the elderly neighbor, Chas. Chas warns her about the building and gives her a magazine with his face on the cover page. When Neil opened the magazine, she found a message from Chas that said, "Look for her in room number 504. Neil asks Ned for the key to room number 504, but he refuses her, saying there is no such room in that building. After a few arguments with the building's manager, Neil discovers that each floor needs to include the same apartment as number 4. To research the matter further, she meets one of her librarian friends arrives, who gives her a few interesting facts about the Lessman building. According to him, the builder, Mr. Lessman, was part of a cult, and he built a series of secret chambers inside the building and gave Neil a blueprint of the building. Neil brings home the blueprint and starts researching the building on her own to discover the truth. Evil within the walls. While searching for the secret chambers of the building, Neil finds a series of weird symbols throughout the building. Meanwhile, the killer abducts another tenant from the elevator and kills him using a hammer. On the other hand, Neil finds a dark, secret passage within the walls of the building and enters hesitantly just to get trapped inside. Meanwhile, she is trapped within the building walls. The kid Austin finds the tape of Julia, where he sees the mysterious killer trying to kill her. He immediately runs towards Neil for her help, but instead finds Steven outside their apartment, who sees the clip and gathers all the men to search for his wife. Trapped inside the walls, Neil finds a torture chamber and all the decapitated bodies of the tenants who had earlier disappeared from the building. Scared from the view before her, Neil runs for her life and hides under a wooden cabinet. The killer starts a series of massacres where he kills the construction worker Ned by chopping off half of his face using a power saw. He also kills a few other crews looking for Neil. During one of the killings, Neil, for the first time, gets to see the natural face of the killer, who hides his deformed, stitched, clumsy-looking face under a balaclava to hide his monstrous self from the crowd, and abducts and kills the tenants of the building to fulfill his sadistic instincts. After several events, Steven finally finds Neil hiding under the wooden cabinet, and they reconcile. Still, the killer manages to kill the building manager using a giant wire cutter. Steven and Neil run for their lives and stumble upon the old guy, Mr. Chass. Mr. Chass tells them the entire story of the mysterious killer, which we will discuss in our next segment, and leads them to the escape door. But the killer attacks them from the pile of corpses lying under them, kills the older man, and captures Neil. Though Steven tries to save Neil using a bludgeon on him, he fatally injures Steven and takes Neil with him to the torture chamber. After taking Neil to the torture chamber, the killer ties her up and tries to cut her in half using a saw. But Steven intervenes and smashes him to death and saves his wife. Eventually, the police arrive and take Steven to the hospital, but they fail to capture the killer. Relieved from all this chaos, we see Neil packing her bags to leave the property, but the killer attacks her from behind, but fails to kill her because of the runes she had drawn on her hands while searching for the hidden chambers. In the end, the police arrive and fire a series of shots at the killer, but he manages to escape from them to take revenge on Neil in the future. The Mystery of Coffin Baby. Much like his iconic villain Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, director Tobe Hooper creates another sinister-looking serial killer in this movie. He is unsettling and unpredictable, with a mystery lingering around him throughout the film. Though, till the climax, his true identity remains hidden from the audience. In the climax, Mr. Chass tells Neil about his history and his true identity for the first time. He tells her that this killer's real name is Coffin Baby because his mother died during his birth and he crawled out of his mother's womb all by himself. I know it might sound off to hear an infant crawling out of his mother's womb, but he was no ordinary child. As I have already explained to you, the architect and the builder of the Lessman Arms was a cultist who believed in blood rituals, occults, and gruesome deaths. This baby became a result of that satanic ritual. It is clearly understandable that Mr. Lessman built this underground chamber behind the walls of that hotel to fulfill his satanic rituals and fulfill his blood rituals by killing the guests. But when the workers started vanishing from the property, the city department closed the property, and his dreams were shattered. Luckily, it was set in Hollywood, where young boys and girls came into the city from across the country hoping to become stars, but got sacrificed in the blood rituals of Mr. Lessman. His characteristics and powers. Unlike Leatherface, director Hopper, who reveals his true face in front of an audience before the climax, his deformed, grotesque, and horrible face is enough to scare anyone. He is also somehow immune to the dark, which might be due to his years of experience living under the shadows of the walls, and he is mighty, scary, and intelligent. Yes, he is brilliant because he plans everything before attacking his prey. Due to living inside the walls for over 57 years, he is well aware of the secret passages, which allows him to plan his attacks skillfully. As the movie is set in a refurbished building filled with construction tools, his weapon of choice justifies the film's title. He uses a variety of tools like hammers, nail guns, drills, and saws to give brutal deaths to the tenants of the building. This shows the sinister and raw nature of his murders. He is an immortal being, but the question is he truly an immortal villain like his long-lost brother Leatherface? From the climax, it is evident that he is immune to bullets. He also escaped death twice, once after Steven tried to kill him using a bludgeon, and, in the end, from the bullets, which proves that he does have some supernatural connections to him. But he does have some weaknesses within him, and that is being a supernatural entity. He is sensitive to all the spells and symbols related to his occult. In the end, he fails to kill Neil because of the symbol she has drawn on her hands during her search for the secret chambers. Marvelous verdict. The Toolbox Murders has some extremely violent scenes and scary moments, which help the movie to escalate the eeriness for a while. Also, the actor, mainly Neil, played by a fantastic Angela Bettis, who famously played Carrie White in the TV film Carrie, were incredible to watch. Some original stunts are scary at times, but Tobe Hooper fails to recreate the similar atmosphere and bone-chilling scenes of his previous movies. Being considered one of the most iconic horror movies ever made, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a masterpiece of horror cinema. The unpredictability, brutal appearance of Leatherface, and the sadistic killings of the villain made it a wholesome, scary movie. However, in the case of Toolbox Murders, there is a lack of tension and drama that never shapes into a frightening narrative. The villain, Coffin Baby, never generates a similar eeriness to Leatherface because instead of showcasing his true face, which is way scarier, he uses a balaclava to cover his face until the climax. So what do you think of this movie? Is it scary enough for you? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more delightful content for your daily entertainment. See ya!